The dash cam's red light blinked like a warning as Officer Daniel Brentwood's hand hovered over his holster facing down Judge Cassandra Miles through her Mercedes window. "Step out of the vehicle, ma'am. This car's been reported stolen." The federal judge's fingers tightened around her ID badge, the same credentials that could end his career in seconds. What happened next would shake the entire police department to its core and transform how America thinks about justice. Stay with me through this incredible story, and don't forget to comment your city below. I want to know how far this story of courage and accountability has traveled. The November rain hammered against the asphalt of Riverside Boulevard, creating rivers of water that reflected the harsh streetlights like broken mirrors. It was 8:47 p.m. on a Thursday evening when Judge Cassandra Miles finally left the federal courthouse, her shoulders heavy with the weight of the day's proceedings. She had just finished presiding over one of the most contentious civil rights cases in the district's history, a class action lawsuit against the Riverside Police Department for systematic racial profiling. The irony of what was about to happen would not be lost on anyone. Cassandra slipped into her black Mercedes S-Class, the leather seats still cold from the November chill. She placed her briefcase carefully in the passenger seat, her judicial robes folded neatly in a garment bag in the trunk. At 52, she had earned every gray strand that streaked through her meticulously maintained hair, each one a testament to battles fought in courtrooms across the state. 23 years of legal practice, 12 as a federal judge, and she still felt that familiar exhaustion after particularly difficult cases. She pulled out of the courthouse parking garage windshield wipers, beating a steady rhythm against the rain. The radio played softly, NPR discussing the very case she had been presiding over. She turned it off, needing silence more than analysis. Her phone buzzed with a text from her daughter Maya, a third-year law student at Georgetown. "Mom saw the news coverage. Proud of you. Stay safe out there." Cassandra smiled, typing a quick response at a red light. "Always am, sweetheart. Call you when I get home." She had no idea those might be the last normal moments of her evening. 3 miles from the courthouse, as she drove through the transitional neighborhood between the government district and the residential areas, the first flash of blue and red appeared in her rearview mirror. Cassandra's eyes flicked to her speedometer. She was going 32 in a 35 zone. Her registration was current, her inspection sticker valid. She hadn't run any lights or failed to signal. Still, she pulled over immediately, choosing a well-lit area near a convenience store. It was a habit ingrained from years of cautious driving. While Black in America always stop where there are witnesses, always where there's light, always where there are cameras. Officer Daniel Brentwood had been on the force for 7 years, and in those 7 years, he had developed what he called instincts about people. His colleagues called it something else behind closed doors, but Brentwood had never faced any formal complaints that stuck. He was careful about that, knew exactly how to word his reports, how to phrase his observations to stay just within the bounds of acceptable police conduct. When he saw the black Mercedes driving through his sector, a car too nice for this neighborhood at this hour, driven by someone he couldn't quite make out through the tinted windows, those instincts kicked in immediately. He ran the plates as he followed the vehicle. They came back clean, registered to a C. Miles, no warrants, no violations. But Brentwood had already made up his mind. In his experience, there was always something if you looked hard enough. "Unit 23 to dispatch," he said into his radio as he activated his lights. "Traffic stop, black Mercedes license plate King David Mike 479, Riverside Boulevard near Mason Street." "Copy, Unit 23. Backup needed." Brentwood watched as the Mercedes pulled over smoothly, professionally even. No sudden moves, no attempt to flee. "Negative dispatch. Routine stop." But as he approached the vehicle, hand instinctively resting on his holster, Brentwood had already decided this would be anything but routine. Cassandra watched in her side mirror as the officer approached. White male mid-30s, walking with that particular swagger that suggested he enjoyed the authority his uniform provided. She had seen that walk 1,000 times in her courtroom, usually right before she had to remind someone that her courtroom operated on law, not ego. She powered down her window before he reached it, hands visible on the steering wheel. Another habit, another survival tactic, dressed up as courtesy. "Good evening, officer," she said, her voice steady, professional. "Is there a problem?" Brentwood leaned down, flashlight beam sweeping across the interior of the car, lingering on her briefcase, the quality of the leather seats, the GPS system showing her home address in the affluent Riverside Heights neighborhood. "License and registration," he said, not returning her greeting. Cassandra nodded slowly. "My license is in my purse, which is in the back seat. My registration is in the glove compartment. Which would you like me to reach for first?" It was a textbook response, the kind taught in defensive driving courses for people of color. Clear communication, no sudden movements, establishing permission for every action. Brentwood's eyes narrowed. Too smooth, too practiced. In his mind, innocent people didn't need to be this careful. "Registration first." Cassandra leaned over, slowly opened the glove compartment, and retrieved the registration. As she handed it over, she said, "Officer, I should inform you that I'm Judge Cassandra Miles. I sit on the Federal District Court. I just left the courthouse about 15 minutes ago." Brentwood's flashlight beam hit her face directly, causing her to squint. He studied the registration, then looked back at her. "Judge, huh?" His tone carried a sneer that made Cassandra's stomach tighten. "And I'm the Pope." "License." "Officer, I'm going to reach for my purse now," Cassandra said, maintaining her calm despite the disrespect. She twisted in her seat, retrieved her purse, and pulled out her wallet. Along with her driver's license, her federal ID was clearly visible. She handed over her license, making sure the federal ID was visible. "As you can see, officer, I am indeed." "Step out of the vehicle." The words hung in the rain-soaked air like a challenge. Cassandra felt her pulse quicken, but her voice remained steady. "Officer, may I ask why you've stopped me?" "Ma'am, I'm not going to ask you again. Step out of the vehicle." Through her rear-view mirror, Cassandra could see people at the convenience store starting to take notice. A few had their phones out. Good, she thought. Witnesses. She opened the door slowly, stepping out into the rain. Her designer heels clicked against the wet pavement as she stood, pulling her coat tighter against the November chill. "Turn around, hands on the vehicle." "Officer Brentwood," she said, reading his nameplate. "I've complied with all your requests. I've shown you my identification. I'm a federal judge, and I'm asking you respectfully, what is the reason for this stop?" Brentwood moved closer, close enough that she could smell the coffee on his breath, see the rain droplets on his badge. "This vehicle was reported stolen earlier this evening." It was a lie, and they both knew it. But Cassandra had presided over enough cases to know that challenging a lie directly during a police encounter could escalate things dangerously. "Officer, this vehicle is registered to me. You've seen the registration. If you run the VIN number, you'll find—" "I said turn around." A small crowd was gathering now. The convenience store's security camera was positioned perfectly to capture the entire scene. The dashcam in Brentwood's patrol car continued its silent recording, its red light blinking steadily in the rain. Cassandra turned around slowly, placing her hands on the wet hood of her car. The rain had soaked through her coat, now her carefully styled hair beginning to fall. She thought of her daughter's text, "Stay safe out there," and felt a bitter irony. "Officer Brentwood," she tried again, her judge's voice cutting through the sound of the rain. "If you check with dispatch, they can verify my identity. Judge Cassandra Miles, Federal District Court, Eastern District. Badge number 2847. Brentwood's hands were already patting her down more roughly than necessary. He felt the phone in her pocket, pulled it out, and tossed it on the hood. Her car keys followed. "You're being awfully specific for someone with a stolen car," he said. "Almost like you practice this story." That's when Thomas Chen pulled up across the street. As an assistant district attorney, he recognized Judge Miles immediately. She had mentored him when he was just a clerk fresh out of law school. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. He parked quickly and grabbed his phone, starting to record as he got out of his car. "Officer!" Thomas called out. That's Judge Miles. I work at the DA's office. I can verify her identity. Brentwood spun around. Sir, stay back. This is a traffic stop. But I know her. I said stay back. Brentwood's hand went to his holster, not drawing his weapon, but the threat was clear. Thomas stopped advancing, but kept recording. I'm Assistant DA Thomas Chen, badge number 1139. That is Federal Judge Cassandra Miles. More people were gathering now. The convenience store owner, an elderly Korean man named Mr. Park, came out with an umbrella trying to offer it to the judge, who was still spread against her car in the rain. Back inside. Brentwood barked. Everyone back. That's when he made his first real mistake. In his agitation, in his growing awareness that this situation was spiraling beyond his control, Brentwood grabbed Cassandra's wrist and twisted it behind her back. Cassandra gasped, not from pain, though there was plenty of that, but from the sheer audacity. Officer, you're making a mistake. I'm a federal. Shut your mouth! The words exploded from Brentwood as he pulled out his handcuffs. The click of metal on metal seemed to echo in the sudden silence that followed his outburst. The crowd's murmur grew louder. More phones appeared. Someone was live streaming on Facebook. Another person was calling 911 to report police brutality. You're cuffing a federal judge! Thomas shouted, his voice cracking with disbelief. This is insane! Brentwood had cuffed Cassandra's right wrist and was pulling her left arm back when she spoke again, her voice now carrying the full weight of her judicial authority despite her compromised position. Officer Daniel Brentwood, badge number 347, at 9:03 p.m. on November 15th. You are unlawfully detaining a federal official. Every second this continues compounds your liability. I am giving you one final opportunity to verify my identity before this becomes a federal case. But Brentwood was beyond listening. In his mind, he had committed too far to back down now. The crowd, the cameras, the rain. It all blurred into a tunnel vision, focused only on completing the arrest. He finished cuffing her and started walking her toward his patrol car. Wait! A young woman pushed through the crowd. She worked at the courthouse, a security guard named Denise Washington, who often exchanged pleasantries with Judge Miles. I work courthouse security, that's Judge Miles. Here, look. She pulled out her phone, bringing up the court's website with Judge Miles's official photo. Brentwood didn't even glance at it. Ma'am, interfering with an arrest is a crime. But she's telling the truth, Denise insisted. That's when the mini-climax hit. Brentwood, frustrated by the growing crowd and the challenges to his authority, made his second critical mistake. He pushed Cassandra against the patrol car hood harder than necessary, and her face pressed against the wet metal. I told everyone to back off, he shouted. The crowd erupted. That's assault, someone yelled. We got it all on video, shouted another. Cassandra, her cheek pressed against the cold hood, spoke loud enough for the dashcam to pick up every word. Officer Brentwood, you've just assaulted a federal judge. Every person here is a witness. Your dashcam is recording. You've violated USC Title 18 Sections 111 and 1001. You have one chance to uncuff me now. Instead of heeding her warning, Brentwood opened the back door of his patrol car. But before he could put her inside, the sound of multiple sirens filled the air. Not just one or two, it sounded like half the department was responding. Unit 23, what's your status? The dispatcher's voice crackled with unusual urgency. Brentwood grabbed his radio with one hand while keeping his other on Cassandra. Suspect in custody. No backup needed. Unit 23 Lieutenant Foster is en route. Orders are to hold position and take no further action. Lieutenant Diane Foster. Brentwood felt his first flutter of concern. Foster was known as a by-the-book officer who had no patience for cowboys or controversial arrests. Still, he had gone too far to back down now. She fits the description of a stolen vehicle suspect, he said into the radio, loud enough for the crowd to hear, trying to justify his actions. What description? Thomas Chen called out. You haven't even given a description. This is racial profiling. The crowd was growing larger. Maybe 30 people now, all recording, all witnessing. Mr. Park had gone back into his store and returned with a laptop pulling up news footage from earlier that day. Look, look. He turned the screen toward Brentwood. She on TV today, Judge Miles Federal Court. Brentwood's jaw clenched. He was drowning in evidence of his mistake, but his pride wouldn't let him surface. That could be anybody. That's when Cassandra played her trump card. Officer Brentwood. She said, her voice calm despite the rain running down her face, despite the handcuffs cutting into her wrists. My judicial robes are in my trunk. My case files are there. The Riverside vs. Coleman civil rights case, the one that's been all over the news. The one where your department is being sued. Check the trunk. The crowd went silent. Even the rain seemed to pause in anticipation. Brentwood's face went through a series of expressions: anger, uncertainty, and finally, a desperate doubling down. He walked to the Mercedes, opened the trunk with her keys. There, in clear garment bags, were her judicial robes. Beside them, boxes of legal files, each one clearly labeled with federal case numbers. On top, a leather-bound folder with the federal seal and Honorable Cassandra Miles embossed in gold. He stared at the evidence for a long moment. The crowd held its collective breath. Then Brentwood slammed the trunk shut and turned back to face everyone. Anybody can buy a robe online. This proves nothing. Probably part of the theft ring. They steal cars and identities. The crowd exploded in disbelief. Are you serious? He's lost his mind. This is crazy. Thomas Chen stepped forward again, his phone still recording. Officer, I'm calling the DA right now. This is Judge Miles. You're destroying your career. And I'm calling the FBI. Denise added, already dialing. This is a federal judge being unlawfully detained. That's when Lieutenant Diane Foster's patrol car screeched to a halt at the scene. She emerged quickly, taking in the scene, the crowd, the phone's Judge Miles in handcuffs against Brentwood's patrol car, the fury and disbelief on everyone's faces. Foster was a 20-year veteran African-American and had worked her way up through the ranks by being scrupulously fair and utterly professional. She had also testified in Judge Miles's courtroom on several occasions and recognized her immediately. Officer Brentwood, Foster said, her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. Step away from the suspect. Lieutenant, I have a stolen vehicle. I said step away. Brentwood reluctantly moved back. Foster approached Cassandra, her face a mask of professional control, hiding her internal horror at the situation. Ma'am, I'm Lieutenant Foster. Can you state your name for me? I am Judge Cassandra Miles, Federal District Court, Eastern District. My federal ID is in my wallet, which Officer Brentwood has in his possession. Foster turned to Brentwood. Give me her effects, now. Brentwood handed over Cassandra's wallet phone and keys. Foster opened the wallet, saw the federal judge ID, and her face went pale. She pulled out her own phone, took a photo of the ID, and sent it to someone. Within seconds, her phone rang. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I understand. Immediately, sir. She hung up and turned to Brentwood. Uncuff her, now. Lieutenant I. That was Chief Morrison. Uncuff Judge Miles immediately, or I'll do it myself, and then arrest you for unlawful detention. The crowd watched in tense silence as Brentwood slowly, reluctantly pulled out his keys. His hands were shaking now as the reality of what he'd done began to sink in. The cuffs came off with a click that sounded like the end of his career. Cassandra slowly brought her arms forward, rubbing her wrists where red marks had already formed. She straightened her coat, pushed her wet hair back from her face, and stood with the dignity that had carried her through a lifetime of similar, if less dramatic, injustices. Lieutenant Foster, she said, her voice steady. I want Officer Brentwood's badge number, his dashcam footage, and all records of this stop preserved immediately. Yes, Your Honor. It's already being done. Cassandra then turned to Brentwood, who seemed to have shrunk several inches in the past minute, She looked him directly in the eyes, letting him see not anger, but something worse, disappointment mixed with determination. "Officer Brentwood," she said, her voice carrying across the crowd. "You've just violated multiple federal statutes. You've assaulted a federal official. You've knowingly made false statements. You've violated my Fourth Amendment rights. And you did it all on camera in front of dozens of witnesses." Brentwood opened his mouth, perhaps to apologize, perhaps to defend himself, but Cassandra raised her hand. "Don't say anything. Anything you say now will be used in the federal investigation that will begin tomorrow morning. But I want you to know something." She stepped closer, close enough that only he and Foster could hear. "This isn't just about me. This is about every person you've done this to, who didn't have my credentials, my connections, my ability to fight back. Tonight you picked the wrong person. But more importantly, you picked the wrong side of history." The rain had slowed to a drizzle, and the crowd was completely silent, sensing they were witnessing something momentous. Foster cleared her throat. "Your Honor, on behalf of the department, Lieutenant, I appreciate your professionalism tonight, but the department can speak for itself in federal court. Right now, I need my phone to call my daughter and tell her I'm safe, despite what she's probably already seeing on social media." Indeed, the live streams had already gone viral. #Judge Miles was trending. News vans were racing toward the scene. The convenience store's parking lot was becoming ground zero for an incident that would reshape discussions about police accountability across the nation. Cassandra took her phone from Foster, saw the dozens of missed calls and messages. Maya had called 7 times. She hit redial. "Mom. Oh my God. Mom, are you okay? It's all over Twitter. The video." "I'm fine, sweetheart. I'm safe. The situation is under control." "Under control? Mom, you were in handcuffs. He pushed you against the car." Cassandra looked around at the crowd, at Thomas Chen still recording at Denise Washington, crying angry tears at Mr. Park, holding his umbrella uselessly, now that the rain had stopped, at Lieutenant Foster, trying to manage a scene that had already spiraled beyond any possible damage control. "Yes," she said into the phone. But sometimes, Maya, injustice has to be this visible for change to happen. Sometimes it takes a federal judge in handcuffs for people to pay attention to what happens every day, to people who don't have my platform. She paused, watching as more police cars arrived, as Chief Morrison himself pulled up, his face grim. "I need to go, sweetheart. There's going to be a lot of questions to answer. But I'm okay. And tomorrow, we're going to make sure this means something." She hung up as Chief Morrison approached his dress uniform, suggesting he'd been pulled from some formal event. He was a tall man, silver-haired, with the bearing of someone who'd risen through the ranks by being political when necessary and tough when required. Right now, he looked like he was watching his department's reputation crumble in real time. "Judge Miles," he began, his voice formal. "I cannot express how deeply sorry." "Chief Morrison," Cassandra interrupted. "Your officer told me this vehicle was reported stolen. I'd like to see that report." Morrison's face reddened. We're investigating the circumstances of the stop." "So there was no stolen vehicle report?" "We're investigating." "Chief, I'm going to make this very simple. By 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, I want a complete internal affairs investigation initiated. I want all footage, all radio communications, all records related to Officer Brentwood's patrol history. I want to know every stop he's made in the last year, particularly any involving African American drivers." Morrison nodded stiffly. "Of course, Your Honor." "And Chief?" Cassandra's voice carried the authority of someone who had spent decades fighting for justice. "This isn't ending with Brentwood. This is about systemic problems in your department. The very case I was presiding over today involves your officers, and now I've experienced firsthand what my plaintiffs have been testifying about." The crowd, which had grown to nearly 50 people, began to applaud. Someone shouted, "Tell them, Judge!" Another voice called out, "We got your back!" Cassandra turned to address them. her voice carrying despite the urban noise around them. "I want to thank all of you. You stood witness tonight. You recorded the truth. You spoke up when you saw injustice. That's what citizenship looks like. That's what courage looks like." She paused, looking at each face in the crowd. "But I also want you to know that this isn't over. What happened to me tonight happens every day to people who don't have federal badges or judicial robes. It happens to people whose stories don't go viral, whose arrests don't make the news. I'm going to use every bit of my authority, my platform, and my privilege to make sure this stops." More applause, but Cassandra wasn't finished. "Officer Brentwood," she called out. He had been standing by his patrol car, looking like he wanted to disappear into the pavement. "Look at me." He raised his head reluctantly. "You had choices tonight. When you saw my ID, you could have apologized and let me go. When the crowd told you who I was, you could have listened. When you opened my trunk and saw my robes, you could have admitted your mistake. But at every turn, you chose escalation over de-escalation. You chose pride over procedure. You chose power over justice." She stepped closer to him, the crowd parting to let her through. "I want you to remember this moment. Not because you arrested a judge that's just your bad luck. Remember it because tonight your true character was revealed. And now everyone knows exactly who you are." Brentwood's face was a mix of shame and defiance. "I was just doing my job," he muttered. "No," Cassandra said firmly. "You were abusing your position. There's a difference, and that difference is about to become very clear to you." Thomas Chen stepped forward. "Judge Miles, I have everything recorded, multiple angles. I'll have it uploaded to cloud storage tonight and copies sent to your office." "Thank you, Thomas. I remember when you were just a nervous clerk in my courtroom. Look at you now, standing up when it mattered." Denise Washington approached next, still wiping tears. "Judge, I'm so sorry this happened to you. You're always so kind to everyone at the courthouse." "This isn't your fault, Denise, but thank you for trying to help. That took courage." Mr. Park shuffled forward with his laptop. "Judge, I have security footage too. High definition. I make copies for you." Cassandra smiled at him, the first genuine smile since this ordeal began. "Thank you, Mr. Park. How's your grandson, still at Berkeley?" "Yes, you remember. He's studying law, now wants to be like you." "Tell him what happened tonight. Tell him this is why we need good lawyers." As Cassandra spoke with the witnesses, Lieutenant Foster was on her radio coordinating with dispatch. More supervisors were arriving, including internal affairs investigators who had been called in specially. The scene was transforming from a traffic stop to what looked like a major crime scene investigation. Chief Morrison was on his phone, and from the fragments, Cassandra could hear he was talking to the mayor, the city attorney, possibly even federal authorities. The ramifications were rippling outward, like waves from a stone dropped in still water. That's when another car pulled up, a black SUV with federal plates. 2 FBI agents emerged, their credentials visible. Judge Miles, the lead agent, a woman named Agent Sarah Chen, no relation to Thomas, approached respectfully. "We received a call about a federal official being assaulted. Are you injured? Do you need medical attention?" "I'm fine, Agent Chen, but I want a federal investigation into this incident." "Already initiated, Your Honor. We'll need your statement tonight if possible." "Of course." Chief Morrison looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Federal involvement meant this was no longer just a local matter. This was now national news, federal jurisdiction, and potentially career-ending for multiple people up the chain of command. Brentwood was still standing by his car, but now he was flanked by a union representative who had arrived and was whispering urgently in his ear. The reality of facing federal charges was sinking in. Cassandra's phone rang again. This time it was the chief judge of the district court. "Cassandra, I just saw the news. Are you all right?" "I'm fine, Richard, but we need to discuss recusal. I obviously can't preside over the Riverside police cases anymore." "Of course. But Cassandra, this is going to change everything, isn't it? She looked around at the scene, the cameras, the federal agents, the nervous police officers, the supportive crowd. Yes, Richard, everything changes tonight. As she spoke, the news vans finally arrived. Reporters jumped out, cameras, already rolling microphones thrust forward. The story was out spreading across social media, and now traditional media at the speed of modern communication. Judge Miles. Judge Miles, can you tell us what happened? Were you targeted because of the case you're presiding over? Will you be filing federal charges? Cassandra raised her hand for silence. The crowd quieted, the reporters leaned in, and even the police officers stopped their activities to listen. I'll make a brief statement, she said, her judicial training evident in her clear, measured tone. Tonight I was stopped without cause, detained without justification, and arrested without basis by Officer Daniel Brentwood of the Riverside Police Department. This occurred despite my clear identification as a federal judge. The entire incident was recorded by multiple witnesses and cameras. She paused, letting her words sink in. But I want to be clear, this is not about me. This is about a pattern of behavior that affects thousands of citizens who don't have my resources or platform. What happened to me tonight happens to others daily, but their stories don't make the news. Their videos don't go viral. Their complaints don't get federal investigation. A reporter shouted, "Are you saying this was racial profiling?" "I'm saying that an officer looked at me and saw a black woman in a nice car in the wrong neighborhood and decided I was suspicious. Despite multiple forms of identification, multiple witnesses vouching for me, and clear evidence in my vehicle, he chose to arrest me. You can draw your own conclusions." "What happens next?" another reporter called out. "Justice," Cassandra said simply. "And reform. Real systematic reform. This ends now." She turned to Chief Morrison. "I'll be at the federal building at 9 a.m. sharp to give my statement. I expect your department's full cooperation with the federal investigation." "Of course, Your Honor." Cassandra then did something that surprised everyone. She walked back to her Mercedes, still parked where this all began, and retrieved something from the glove compartment. It was a small notebook, worn and well used. "Do you know what this is, Chief?" she asked Morrison. He shook his head. "This is my log. 23 years worth of times I've been stopped, followed, questioned, or harassed while driving. Times when I wasn't a judge yet, just a black woman trying to get home. Times when I was a young lawyer rushing to court. Times when I was a new judge still getting used to the weight of the position." She opened it, pages filled with dates, times, locations, badge numbers. 47 incidents, Chief. 47 times I've been stopped for no reason other than the color of my skin. But tonight is different. Tonight is number 48, and it's the last one I'll tolerate. Not just for me, but for everyone. The crowd had gone silent again. Some were crying. Others were nodding, their own experiences reflected in her words. Lieutenant Foster stepped forward. "Your Honor, may I escort you home, or to the hospital for documentation of any injuries?" "I'll drive myself, Lieutenant. I was safe to drive when Officer Brentwood stopped me, and I'm safe to drive now. But I appreciate the offer." As Cassandra prepared to leave, Thomas Chen called out, "Judge, what about Officer Brentwood? What should happen to him?" Cassandra looked at Brentwood one last time. He was being escorted to a department vehicle, now not under arrest, but clearly about to face serious consequences. "Officer Brentwood will face the justice system he swore to serve," she said. "He'll have due process, fair representation, and the presumption of innocence, all the things he denied me tonight. That's what separates justice from vengeance." With that, she got into her Mercedes. The crowd parted to let her through, many applauding, some calling out words of support. As she drove away, she could see in her mirrors the chaos she left behind: reporters interviewing witnesses, federal agents collecting evidence, Chief Morrison dealing with the growing crowd. But there was one detail that nobody else had noticed yet, one piece of this puzzle that would only come to light later. As Cassandra drove home, she thought about the timing of the stop, the specific location. The fact that Brentwood had been waiting in just the right spot to see her leave the courthouse. This wasn't random, this was targeted. And tomorrow, when she gave her statement to the FBI, when investigators dug into Brentwood's history and connections, they would discover something that would turn this from a simple case of racial profiling into something far more sinister. Brentwood's brother-in-law was Marcus Stone, a former Riverside police officer who had been forced to resign 5 years ago after Judge Miles had ruled against him in a brutality case. Stone had lost his pension, his reputation, and blamed Judge Miles for ruining his life. The text messages between Stone and Brentwood would later reveal everything. She leaves the courthouse around 9 on Thursdays. Black Mercedes license plate KDM 479. Make it look routine. She needs to know what it feels like to be powerless. But that revelation would come tomorrow. Tonight, as Cassandra finally pulled into her driveway, she saw Maya's car already there. Her daughter ran out still in her study clothes and wrapped her in a fierce hug. "Mom, I'm so proud of you," Maya whispered. "For what? Getting arrested? For standing up? For not backing down? For being exactly who you've always taught me to be." They stood there in the driveway holding each other while Cassandra's phone buzzed with messages from colleagues, civil rights organizations, and media outlets. The video had now been viewed over 1 million times. The hashtag Judge Miles was trending nationally. Inside the house, they turned on the news. Every channel was covering the story. Legal analysts were already discussing the federal charges Brentwood could face. Civil rights leaders were calling for immediate reform. The Riverside Police Department was in full crisis mode. "You know this changes everything, right?" Maya said, watching the coverage. "The case you're presiding over the department, maybe even law enforcement nationally." Cassandra nodded. "That's the point. Sometimes it takes someone with privilege and power experiencing injustice for the system to pay attention. I hate that it's true. But if my experience tonight can prevent this from happening to others, then we use it." Her phone rang. It was the U.S. Attorney for the district. "Cassandra, I just want you to know we're taking this very seriously. We'll be convening a grand jury within the week." "Thank you, Michael. But I want more than just charges against Brentwood. I want a consent decree. I want federal oversight of the Riverside PD. I want real reform." "We'll discuss it tomorrow. Get some rest." But rest wouldn't come easily. As Cassandra sat in her home safe, but still processing the evening's events, she thought about all the people who had experienced what she had, but without her advantages. No federal badge to flash. No crowd of witnesses to support them. No viral video to demand justice. Tomorrow would begin a legal battle that would consume months of her life. There would be depositions, hearings, media appearances. Brentwood would claim he was just doing his job, that he had reasonable suspicion. His union would back him. Some would even try to paint him as the victim of an ambitious judge playing the race card. But tonight had created something that couldn't be undone, undeniable proof of what Black Americans had been saying for generations. It wasn't just bad apples. It wasn't just misunderstandings. It was systematic, deliberate, and tolerated until someone with power finally experienced it firsthand. As midnight approached, Cassandra finally allowed herself to feel the full weight of the evening's emotions. The fear when she saw those lights. The humiliation of being cuffed. The rage at being dismissed and disbelieved. The determination to turn this pain into purpose. She pulled out her phone and opened Twitter. The videos were everywhere. The conversation was global. And in the midst of all the outrage and support, she found a message from an unexpected source, Officer Diane Foster. "Your Honor, I know you have no reason to trust anyone in our department right now, but I want you to know that some of us have been fighting for reform from the inside. Tonight proved we haven't been fighting hard enough. I'm ready to testify to everything I've seen, not just tonight, but over the years. Change has to come from within, too. I'm ready to be part of that change." Cassandra smiled slightly. Maybe there was hope after all. Not just for justice in her case, but for real lasting reform. Tomorrow, the legal machinery would begin turning. The FBI would investigate. The media would dig deeper. The truth about Brentwood's connections to Marcus Stone would emerge. The pattern of his stops would be analyzed. The department's culture would be exposed. But tonight, in the quiet of her home with her daughter beside her, Judge Cassandra Miles allowed herself one moment of satisfaction. She had stood her ground. She had maintained her dignity. And she had turned a moment of injustice into a catalyst for change. The red light of Officer Brentwood's dashcam had indeed recorded everything. But what it really captured was the beginning of the end of silence, the end of acceptance, the end of, "That's just how things are." Change was coming. And it started with a traffic stop in the rain, a federal judge in handcuffs, and the courage to stand up when it mattered most. The next morning arrived with a gray dawn that matched the mood of the city. Cassandra had barely slept, her mind replaying the previous night's events, while her phone continued to buzz with notifications. At 6 a.m., she was already dressed in her most authoritative suit, the navy blue one she reserved for the most serious occasions. Maya had insisted on driving her to the federal building, worried about her mother facing this alone. "You don't have to come in with me," Cassandra said as they pulled into the underground parking garage. "Try and stop me," Maya replied, her jaw set with the same determination Cassandra recognized from her own mirror. The federal building's lobby was already crowded with reporters when they arrived through the secure entrance. Word had leaked about the timing of Cassandra's statement, and everyone wanted the first exclusive quote from the judge who'd been arrested. FBI Special Agent Sarah Chen met them at the security checkpoint, her expression professional but sympathetic. "Your Honor, we've set up in Conference Room A. It's going to be a long morning." "I've cleared my entire day," Cassandra replied. "Let's get started." The conference room was already occupied by several FBI agents, a court reporter, and surprisingly, 2 representatives from the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division who had flown in on the red-eye from Washington. Judge Miles, the senior DOJ representative, a stern-faced woman named Patricia Hawkins, stood to shake her hand. "I want you to know that the Attorney General himself is monitoring this situation. We're treating this as a priority investigation." Cassandra sat down Maya beside her, despite the agent's suggestion she wait outside. "My daughter stays. She's a law student and my witness to the aftermath." "Of course," Agent Chen said, starting a digital recorder. "Judge Miles, please tell us everything from the beginning." For the next 2 hours, Cassandra recounted every detail of the traffic stop. The agents interrupted frequently with questions, their faces growing increasingly grim as the full picture emerged. When she showed them her notebook documenting 47 previous stops over 23 years, Patricia Hawkins actually gasped. "You've been keeping records all this time. I learned early in my career that documentation is protection," Cassandra replied, "though it didn't protect me much last night." Agent Chen pulled out a tablet. "We've already reviewed Officer Brentwood's dashcam footage. It corroborates everything you've said. But there's something else we've discovered." She turned the tablet toward Cassandra. On the screen was a series of text messages between 2 phone numbers. "These are messages between Officer Brentwood and Marcus Stone. Do you know who Marcus Stone is?" Cassandra's blood ran cold. "Marcus Stone, former Officer Stone. I ruled against him in a police brutality case 5 years ago." "He's Brentwood's brother-in-law," Agent Chen continued. "These messages date back 3 weeks. They've been planning this." Maya grabbed her mother's hand as they read the messages together. "She ruined my life. I'll make her feel what it's like to be helpless. Thursday nights around 9. Make it look routine." "This wasn't random," Cassandra said, her voice steady, despite her racing heart. "This was targeted harassment. This was conspiracy." "It's more than that," Patricia Hawkins interjected. "This could be considered attempted kidnapping of a federal official. The premeditation elevates everything. We're looking at potential 20-year sentences here." There was a knock on the door. Another agent entered, his face urgent. "We have a situation. Officer Brentwood is at Riverside PD headquarters giving a press conference." "What?" Agent Chen pulled up a news feed on her laptop. On the screen, Daniel Brentwood stood at a podium, flanked by his union representative and a lawyer. He looked haggard, but defiant. His uniform crisp, despite the dark circles under his eyes. "I've been painted as a racist and a corrupt cop by the media," Brentwood was saying into the cluster of microphones. "But I was doing my job. I received information about a stolen vehicle matching that description. I followed procedure. The fact that the driver turned out to be a judge doesn't change the reasonable suspicion I had at the time of the stop." Cassandra felt Maya's hand tighten on hers. "He's lying on national television." "Let him," Agent Chen said grimly. "Every lie he tells is another federal charge. We have his text messages. We have the absence of any stolen vehicle report. We have everything." On screen, a reporter shouted a question. "Officer Brentwood, what about the witnesses who identified Judge Miles? What about her federal ID?" In the dark and the rain, with a crowd getting hostile, I had to make quick decisions for my safety. Brentwood responded clearly, reading from a prepared statement. "Anyone can claim to be someone important. Anyone can have fake IDs. I was being cautious." "But you saw her judicial robes in the trunk," another reporter pressed. "As I said last night, anyone can buy robes online. Identity theft rings are sophisticated these days." Patricia Hawkins snorted. "He's digging his own grave. This press conference will be Exhibit A in his conspiracy trial." But then Brentwood said something that made everyone in the room lean forward. "I want to address the allegations about my brother-in-law, Marcus Stone," he continued. "Yes, Marcus is family. Yes, Judge Miles ruled against him, but that has nothing to do with last night. The suggestion that I would target a federal judge for personal revenge is absurd and offensive." "Sir, do you deny exchanging messages with Marcus Stone about Judge Miles?" a reporter called out. Brentwood's lawyer grabbed the microphone. "We're not discussing any alleged private communications taken out of context. This press conference is over." As they hustled Brentwood away from the podium, Cassandra's phone rang. It was Chief Morrison. "Your Honor, I apologize for Brentwood's press conference. The union insisted and we couldn't legally prevent it. But I want you to know he's been suspended without pay, pending investigation." "Chief, I appreciate the call, but suspension isn't enough. This man conspired with your former officer to target me. This is a criminal conspiracy." "I understand. The FBI has already seized his phone computer and locker contents. We're cooperating fully." After Cassandra hung up, Agent Chen stood. "Judge Miles, we need to discuss security. If Stone and Brentwood conspired, once there might be others involved." "You think I'm still in danger?" "Until we know the full extent of this conspiracy, yes. We'd like to assign protective detail." Cassandra was about to refuse when Maya spoke up. "Mom, please, take the protection." Looking at her daughter's worried face, Cassandra nodded. "Fine, but I'm not hiding. I have work to do." They were interrupted by another knock. This time it was Cassandra's clerk, breathless from running. "Judge, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you need to know the Riverside Police Union just filed a defamation lawsuit against you." "What?" Maya exploded. "They're suing her." The clerk handed over the filing. "They claim your statements last night damaged Officer Brentwood's reputation and prejudiced potential jury pools. They're seeking $10 million in damages." Patricia Hawkins laughed, actually laughed. "This is legal suicide. They're suing a federal judge for describing her own unlawful arrest. This will be dismissed within hours. But the audacity." Cassandra read through the filing quickly. "They're trying to intimidate me. Make me back down, settle quietly." "Will you?" Agent Chen asked. "Not a chance," Cassandra replied. "In fact, this gives me standing to countersue. Discovery in a civil case is much broader than in a criminal one. They just gave me access to every record, every email, every communication in their entire union." The strategic implications dawned on everyone simultaneously. The Union had just made a catastrophic tactical error. Cassandra's phone buzzed with a text from Thomas Chen, the ADA who'd filmed the arrest. "Judge urgent. Can you check Channel 7 News right now?" Agent Chen pulled up the local news feed. A breaking news banner scrolled across the bottom. 3 more women come forward with similar Officer Brentwood arrest stories. The anchor was interviewing a young black woman, tears streaming down her face. "He pulled me over 6 months ago, said my car was too nice for someone like me. When I showed him my nurse ID from the hospital, he said it was probably fake. I spent 6 hours in jail before they realized their mistake." Another woman appeared on split screen. "Last year, same thing. Driving home from my job at the tech company. He said I fit a description but could never tell me what description." A third woman, elderly and dignified, spoke carefully. "I'm a retired school principal, 40 years in education. He pulled me over in front of my own home, insisted I was trespassing in my own driveway." Maya gasped. "Mom, this is a pattern. He's done this before." Patricia Hawkins was already on her phone. "I need a team to track down every arrest Brentwood has made in the last 5 years. Focus on black women in nice cars. This is now a federal civil rights investigation." The mini-climax hit when Agent Chen's phone rang. She listened intently, her face growing pale. "Your Honor, we have a problem. Marcus Stone is missing. His apartment is cleared out. Neighbors say he left in a hurry around 3 a.m. this morning." "He's running," Cassandra said. "Or hiding," Agent Chen replied ominously. "We're issuing a federal warrant for his arrest, but Judge, if he's desperate enough to run, he might be desperate enough to do something worse." The protective detail suddenly seemed less like precaution and more like necessity. The door burst open again. This time, it was Chief Morrison himself, looking like he'd aged another decade overnight. "Your Honor, I need to speak with you urgently. We've discovered something in Brentwood's personnel file." "What kind of something?" Patricia Hawkins demanded. Morrison hesitated, then pulled out a folder. 3 years ago, there was an internal complaint against Brentwood. Excessive force during a traffic stop. The complainant was a black female attorney. The complaint was investigated by Sergeant Marcus Stone. The room went silent. "Stone investigated a complaint against his own brother-in-law," Cassandra asked incredulously. "And cleared him." Morrison added, his shame evident. "Found no wrongdoing. The complaint was buried. The attorney was told there was insufficient evidence." "Who was the attorney?" Agent Chen asked. "Denise Johnson. She works at the public defender's office now." Cassandra knew Denise. They'd appeared opposite each other in court many times. "Get her on the phone, now." Within minutes, they had Denise Johnson on speaker. Her voice was bitter. "I knew this day would come. When I saw what happened to you last night, Judge Miles, I wanted to scream. He did the exact same thing to me, but I didn't have your platform. I didn't have witnesses, and his brother-in-law made sure my complaint went nowhere." "Would you be willing to testify?" Patricia Hawkins asked. "I've been waiting 3 years for someone to ask me that question. Yes, absolutely yes." As they ended the call, another revelation emerged. Agent Chen had been scrolling through her tablet cross-referencing data. "Your Honor, I'm finding a pattern here. In the last 5 years, Officer Brentwood has arrested 17 black women during traffic stops. All were driving cars valued over $40,000. All were eventually released without charges. And guess who was the reviewing supervisor for 12 of those arrests? Marcus Stone. Cassandra said, the full scope of the conspiracy becoming clear. "They were hunting," Maya said, her voice disgusted. "They were specifically targeting successful black women." "It's worse than that," Agent Chen continued. 3 of these women filed formal complaints. All 3 complaints were investigated by Stone. All 3 were dismissed. The door opened once more, and this time it was someone unexpected, Lieutenant Diane Foster, the officer who had freed Cassandra the night before. She wasn't alone. Behind her stood 4 other Riverside police officers, all looking determined. "Your Honor," Foster began, "we're here to provide testimony. We've been documenting Brentwood's behavior for years, but every time we tried to report it, Stone would shut us down. He had protection from high up, maybe even the chief's office." Chief Morrison's face went red. "Lieutenant, that's a serious accusation." "It's a serious situation, Chief," Foster shot back. "How else do you explain Stone being able to bury multiple complaints? How else do you explain Brentwood feeling confident enough to arrest a federal judge?" One of the other officers, a young Hispanic man, stepped forward. "I have recordings, Your Honor. Stone conducting roll call, telling us to be extra vigilant about nice cars in certain neighborhoods, telling us that they don't belong here, and we should make them prove they belong." "You recorded your supervisor?" Morrison asked, shocked. "After he threatened to bury me for reporting Brentwood's behavior? Yes, sir, I did." Patricia Hawkins was typing furiously on her laptop. "This is RICO. This is organized conspiracy under color of law. This isn't just about last night anymore. This is about systematic civil rights violations." Cassandra stood her judicial bearing, commanding the room's attention. "I want every victim contacted. I want every buried complaint resurfaced. I want every officer who tried to report this and was silenced to be protected and heard." "Your Honor," Chief Morrison started, but Cassandra cut him off. "Chief, your department is about to be under federal consent decree. You can either cooperate fully and be part of the solution, or you can resist and be replaced. Which will it be?" Morrison slumped in his chair. "Full cooperation. You have my word." "Your word?" Lieutenant Foster laughed bitterly. "Chief, with all due respect, your word isn't worth much right now. You're either incompetent for not knowing this was happening or complicit for allowing it. Either way, your resignation should be on the mayor's desk by end of business today." The room erupted in arguments, but Cassandra raised her hand for silence. Her phone was ringing. The caller ID showed it was the chief judge of the district court. "Cassandra, are you watching the news? Which channel?" "All of them. Brentwood's lawyer just released what he claims is exculpatory evidence. A photo from a security camera showing a car similar to yours at the scene of an actual car theft 2 hours before your stop." Cassandra's heart sank. "They're fabricating evidence. That's what we need to find out. Can you come to the courthouse? The U.S. Attorney wants to convene an emergency grand jury." As Cassandra prepared to leave, the biggest twist of the morning came from an unexpected source. One of the officers who'd come with Lieutenant Foster, a veteran named Patricia Williams, spoke up quietly. "Your Honor, there's something else you need to know. Marcus Stone didn't just run this morning. He emptied the union's legal defense fund. $3 million gone." The room exploded. Morrison jumped to his feet. "What? How do you know this?" "Because I'm the union treasurer," Williams replied. "I discovered it an hour ago. Stone had signing authority as a former union official. He cleaned it out through a series of transfers last night. The money's gone, probably offshore by now." "He's not just running," Agent Chen said grimly. "He's financing his disappearance with stolen union funds. This just became a federal financial crime on top of everything else." Cassandra felt the weight of the moment. What had started as a traffic stop had unveiled a criminal conspiracy that reached into every corner of the Riverside Police Department. "We need to find Stone," she said. "He's the key to all of this." "We have every airport bus station and train station on alert," Agent Chen assured her. But Cassandra had a feeling it wouldn't be that simple. Stone had been planning this for weeks, maybe months. The traffic stop wasn't just about revenge, it was about something bigger. But what? As they walked toward the parking garage, Maya at her side and federal agents surrounding them, Cassandra's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You think you've won, but this is just beginning. You took everything from Marcus. Now we take everything from you. This isn't over." Agent Chen immediately took the phone. "We'll trace this." But Cassandra knew they wouldn't find anything. This was no longer just about one bad cop or even a conspiracy between brothers-in-law. This was about something deeper, darker, and more dangerous than any of them had imagined. The federal building's garage was swarming with security as they reached Cassandra's car. Maya insisted on driving, while Cassandra sat in the back with Agent Chen, reviewing the mounting evidence on a secure tablet. "Your Honor," Agent Chen said carefully as they drove toward the courthouse. "There's something in Stone's background that troubles me. Before he became a cop, he was military, special forces. He has skills that make him particularly dangerous as a fugitive." "Are you trying to scare me, Agent Chen?" "I'm trying to prepare you. This man blamed you for losing everything: his career, his pension, his reputation. Now he's stolen $3 million and disappeared. That's not the action of someone who plans to go quietly into the night." They were 3 blocks from the courthouse when it happened. A delivery truck ran a red light, slamming into their escort vehicle. Maya screamed, swerving to avoid the collision. The second escort car screeched to a halt as armed men in masks surrounded them. "Get down!" Agent Chen shouted, pushing Cassandra to the floor while drawing her weapon. The attack lasted less than 30 seconds. Smoke grenades exploded around their car, creating chaos and confusion. Through the smoke, Cassandra could hear shouting gunfire sirens approaching. Then, as suddenly as it began, it was over. The attackers melted away into the city streets, leaving behind damaged vehicles and shaken law enforcement officers. "Is everyone okay?" Agent Chen called out, still shielding Cassandra. "Mom!" Maya's voice was panicked. "Mom, are you hurt?" "I'm fine," Cassandra said, though her hands were shaking. What just happened? Agent Chen was already on her radio coordinating response teams. "That was a probe. They were testing our response, seeing how we protect you." "Stone. Has to be. But this means he's not working alone." This was professional, coordinated. As more federal agents arrived and secured the scene, Cassandra realized the truth. The traffic stop hadn't been the end of something, it had been the beginning. Stone and his conspirators had declared war, and she was at the center of it. But as she stood there, surrounded by broken glass and smoke, something hardened inside her. They wanted her to be afraid, to back down, to disappear. Instead, she straightened her suit, brushed the glass from her hair, and looked directly into the news cameras that had already arrived. "To those responsible for this attack," she said, her voice carrying across the chaos, "you've made a mistake. You think violence will silence me, but you've only strengthened my resolve. Justice doesn't bow to intimidation. The law doesn't yield to threats, and neither do I." As the cameras rolled and the city watched, Judge Cassandra Miles walked through the smoke and debris toward the courthouse, her daughter beside her, federal agents flanking them. She had court to attend, justice to serve, and a conspiracy to unravel. The war for justice had begun, and Cassandra Miles was ready to fight it. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters when they finally arrived, the attempted ambush having transformed from breaking news into a media frenzy. Cassandra walked through them without comment, her focus laser-sharp on what needed to be done. Inside, the marble halls echoed with urgent footsteps as federal marshals had locked down the building, checking every corner, every shadow. U.S. Attorney Michael Harrison was waiting in the secure conference room, his usual calm demeanor replaced by barely controlled fury. They attacked federal agents protecting a federal judge. Stone just elevated this from conspiracy to domestic terrorism. "Any casualties from the ambush?" Cassandra asked, settling into her chair while Maya stood protectively behind her. "2 agents injured, nothing life-threatening. But Cassandra, this changes our entire approach. We're not just prosecuting a corrupt cop anymore. We're dealing with what appears to be a militia-style organization." Patricia Hawkins entered the room, her phone pressed to her ear. She ended the call and turned to face them. "The Attorney General just authorized a joint task force. FBI, ATF, U.S. Marshals. Stone and his network are now considered armed and extremely dangerous." "What about Brentwood?" Cassandra asked. "Is he connected to the ambush?" "He's in custody now," Harrison replied. "We arrested him 20 minutes ago." He claims he knew nothing about any planned attack, says he hasn't spoken to Stone since last night. Do we believe him? His phone records suggest he's telling the truth at least about recent contact. But Judge, there's something else. Harrison pulled out a file. We've been digging into Stone's background. After he was forced out of the police force, he didn't just disappear. He's been building something. The file contained surveillance photos, financial records, and intelligence reports. Stone had been recruiting discharged police officers, former military personnel, with grievances and extremist sympathizers. They called themselves the Blue Line Patriots, and they had training camps in 3 states. This is a paramilitary organization, Cassandra said, studying the documents. How did no one know about this? Because they were smart. Agent Chen answered, entering the room with fresh intelligence. They kept their numbers small, communicated through encrypted channels, and until now, they hadn't acted. Your traffic stop was supposed to be their statement moment. But it backfired, Harrison added. Instead of humiliating you, they exposed themselves. Stone had to accelerate his timeline. Maya, who had been quietly listening, suddenly spoke up. Wait, if they've been planning this for months, maybe years, then Mom wasn't just a target of opportunity. She was specifically chosen. What do you mean? Patricia Hawkins asked. Think about it. A black female federal judge who's ruled against police officers. Mom represents everything these extremists hate about the changing justice system. They wanted to make an example of her. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't just about revenge for Marcus Stone's lost career. This was about ideology, about a violent rejection of progress and accountability in law enforcement. Cassandra's phone buzzed. It was Thomas Chen, the ADA, who had filmed her arrest. Judge, I'm at the jail with Brentwood. He says he'll only talk to you. Claims he has information about Stone's plans. Harrison shook his head. It's a trap. He's trying to manipulate the situation. But Cassandra was already standing. Maybe, but if there's even a chance he knows something that could prevent another attack, I have to hear it. The drive to the city jail was tense, federal vehicles forming a protective convoy around them. Inside the jail, Brentwood sat in an interrogation room, his uniform replaced with orange coveralls, his earlier defiance replaced with what looked like genuine fear. Judge Miles, he said as she entered, accompanied by Agent Chen and Harrison. Thank you for coming. You have 5 minutes, Officer Brentwood. Talk. Brentwood's hands trembled as he spoke. I swear I didn't know about the attack today. Marcus, Stone told me this was just about embarrassing you, making you feel powerless for once. He said it was justice for what you did to him. What I did was uphold the law, Cassandra replied coldly. Your brother-in-law beat a suspect so badly he was hospitalized for 3 weeks. I know, but Marcus, he got in my head. Said you were part of a system trying to destroy good cops. Said we had to fight back. Brentwood paused, swallowing hard. But this morning, after my arrest, I got a message. Not from Marcus directly, but from someone in his group. He pulled out a piece of paper, a printed email that his lawyer had brought him. They said I was burned, that I should keep my mouth shut or my family would pay. Judge, I have a wife and 2 kids. I never signed up for this level of insanity. Cassandra read the message. It was vague, but threatening, signed only with BLP, Blue Line Patriots. Where's Stone? Agent Chen demanded. I don't know, I swear, but there's something else. Last week, Marcus was talking about a judge in California who dismissed a case against a cop. Said the judge understood how things should work. Judge Raymond Fitzgerald in Sacramento. Harrison was already on his phone. Get me everything on Judge Fitzgerald, now. Within minutes, they had their answer. Judge Fitzgerald had recently dismissed 3 police brutality cases on technical grounds. He was also scheduled to speak at a law enforcement conference, in 2 days, a conference where hundreds of police officials would be gathered. Stone's going after Fitzgerald? Cassandra asked. No, Brentwood said, his voice barely a whisper. He's going to the conference, Marcus said something about showing the country what happens when the system turns against its protectors. He said Fitzgerald would be there to witness the reckoning. The mini-climax exploded as Agent Chen's phone rang urgently. "What are you certain? Send everything to my tablet now." She looked up, her face pale. 3 members of Stone's group just tried to board flights to Sacramento using fake IDs. Airport security caught them, but if 3 tried... Others succeeded, Harrison finished. Stone's planning something at that conference. Cassandra stood abruptly. "We need to warn them. Cancel the conference." "It starts tomorrow," Harrison said. 500 attendees from across the country, including the Attorney General and the FBI Director. If we're right about Stone's intentions, it's going to be a massacre, Maya said, her voice horrified. As they raced back to the federal building to coordinate with national security teams, another twist emerged. Lieutenant Foster called Cassandra directly. "Judge, I'm at the station. We just found something in Stone's old desk. He must have forgotten about it when he cleaned out 5 years ago." "What is it?" "A journal. And Judge, he's been planning something like this since before he was fired. Your ruling against him didn't start this. It just gave him the excuse he was looking for." The federal building had transformed into a crisis command center. FBI agents, U.S. Marshals, and ATF personnel crowded the operations room, multiple screens, showing airport footage, highway cameras, and intelligence feeds. The Attorney General himself appeared on the main screen from Washington. "Judge Miles," he said gravely, "I understand you've been at the center of this from the beginning. We need your insight. Mr. Attorney General Stone chose me as a symbol. He wants to show that the justice system has become weak, that it persecutes law enforcement while protecting criminals. The conference attack isn't just about violence. It's about sending a message." "What kind of message?" "That there's a war coming, between those who want police accountability and those who see any oversight as betrayal." The room erupted in activity as new intelligence arrived. Stone had been spotted on surveillance cameras at a truck stop in Nevada heading east, not west, toward Sacramento. "He's using misdirection," Agent Chen realized. "The Sacramento threat is real, but Stone himself is going somewhere else." "Where?" Harrison demanded. Cassandra studied the map, thinking about Stone's psychology, his need for symbolic victory. Then it hit her. "Here. He's coming back here." "That's insane," Harrison said. "Why would he return to where everyone's looking for him?" "Because tomorrow is the preliminary hearing for the federal civil rights case against the Riverside Police Department, the case I was presiding over before I recused myself. Media from around the world will be here. Stone wants to make his statement where it all started." Patricia Hawkins was already on her phone coordinating security. "We're locking down the courthouse. No one gets in without triple verification." But Cassandra shook her head. "That's what he wants. To show that one man can make the entire federal justice system cower. We can't cancel the hearing." "You're suggesting we use it as bait. I'm suggesting we give Stone what he thinks he wants, a stage, but we control the theater." The plan that emerged over the next hour was audacious. They would proceed with the hearing, but with massive hidden security. Every entrance would be monitored, every person scanned, every vehicle checked. Stone might be special forces trained, but he was still just one man with limited resources. As night fell, Cassandra finally returned home under heavy guard. Maya had refused to leave her side, and they sat together in the living room. Exhaustion weighing on them both. "Mom, are you sure about tomorrow being bait?" "I won't be in the courtroom. Judge Patterson is taking the case now. But yes, I'll be in the building. Stone needs to believe he can get to me." "What if something goes wrong?" Cassandra pulled her daughter close. "Then we trust the system we've spent our lives serving. The system Stone thinks is broken beyond repair." At 3 a.m., Cassandra's phone rang. It was Agent Chen. "We caught 2 more of Stone's people trying to infiltrate the courthouse maintenance crew. They had building plans, security protocols, everything. How did they get that information? That's what worries me. Someone inside is helping them. Someone with high-level access. The implications were chilling. The conspiracy went deeper than just Stone and his militants. Someone within the justice system itself was complicit. Dawn broke gray and threatening, matching the mood of the city. The courthouse was surrounded by unmarked vehicles, rooftop snipers in position, every precaution taken. But Cassandra knew Stone was too smart for obvious attacks. He would have something unexpected planned. She arrived at the courthouse at 7 a.m., 3 hours before the hearing. The building was eerily quiet, most employees told to stay home for their safety. Only essential personnel were present, each one thoroughly vetted. In her temporary office, Cassandra reviewed the case files one more time. The irony wasn't lost on her. The very case that had made her a target was proceeding despite the threats against her. At 8:30, Thomas Chen arrived with urgent news. "Judge, we've been monitoring social media. The Blue Line Patriots released a manifesto an hour ago. They're calling today the Restoration. They claim they're going to restore proper order to the justice system." Cassandra read the manifesto on Thomas's phone. It was a rambling document full of grievances against judicial overreach, complaints about anti-police sentiment, and calls for supporters to stand ready. But buried in the rhetoric was something that made her blood run cold. The corruption goes to the highest levels. Even federal judges can be bought by those who hate our heroes in blue. Today we expose the truth about Judge Cassandra Miles and her criminal connections. Criminal connections? Maya asked. What are they talking about? Before anyone could answer, Patricia Hawkins burst in. "We have a problem. Stone just released documents claiming to show you took bribes from criminal defense attorneys to rule against police officers." "That's absurd." "Of course it is. But the documents look authentic at first glance. Bank records, emails, recorded conversations. It's all fabricated, but it's sophisticated." Cassandra understood immediately. "This isn't about killing me. It's about destroying me. Stone wants to discredit not just me, but every ruling I've ever made against law enforcement." The twist came from an unexpected source. Brentwood's lawyer arrived at the courthouse insisting his client had more information. Against all protocols, they brought Brentwood from his cell to a secure room in the courthouse. "Judge Miles," Brentwood said urgently. "I remembered something. Stone mentioned a name once. Sarah Mitchell. Said she was the inside person who could make anything look real." Sarah Mitchell. Cassandra knew that name. She was a cybersecurity expert who worked for the federal court system. Someone with access to everything. Judges' emails, financial records, secure communications. Agent Chen was already running the name. Sarah Mitchell, hired 3 years ago. Clean background check, exemplary service record. Wait. Her face went white. Her maiden name was Stone. She's Marcus Stone's cousin. The pieces fell into place with horrifying clarity. For 3 years, Stone's cousin had been inside the federal system, gathering information, preparing for this moment. The forged documents weren't created overnight. They'd been carefully crafted over years to look authentic. "Find her! Now!" Harrison commanded. But Sarah Mitchell had vanished. Her apartment was empty, her office cleared out. She'd been gone since the previous evening, taking with her who knew what sensitive information. At 9:45, 15 minutes before the hearing, the courthouse metal detectors went off. A man in a delivery uniform was trying to enter with what appeared to be court documents. When security stopped him, he ran. In the chase that followed, federal agents tackled him in the courthouse plaza. It wasn't Stone. It was another member of his group carrying not weapons, but hundreds of flyers with the forged documents proving Cassandra's corruption. It's a distraction, Agent Chen realized. While we're focused on this, Stone is... The lights went out. The courthouse plunged into darkness, emergency lighting flickering on seconds later. In those seconds of chaos, shouting erupted from the main courtroom. When Cassandra and the agents reached the courtroom, they found chaos. Someone had triggered smoke grenades, filling the room with thick white clouds. Through the smoke, a figure in tactical gear stood at the judge's bench, spray painting something across the wall. "Stone!" Agent Chen shouted, raising her weapon. The figure turned, and for a moment, Cassandra saw Marcus Stone's eyes through the tactical mask filled with hatred and triumph. He'd made it into the courthouse, into the very courtroom where the hearing about police accountability was to take place. But Stone hadn't counted on one thing. Judge Patterson, the 70-year-old judge who'd taken over the case, was a former Marine. As Stone tried to flee, Patterson tackled him from behind, bringing him down hard on the courtroom floor. The struggle was brief but violent. Federal agents swarmed Stone, finally subduing him as he screamed about justice and betrayal. On the wall, his spray-painted message was clear: "The system is corrupt. Blue lives matter more." As Stone was dragged away in chains, he locked eyes with Cassandra one last time. "This isn't over," he snarled. "You think you've won, but you've just proven our point. The system protects criminals and persecutes heroes." "No, Mr. Stone," Cassandra replied calmly. "The system protected itself from someone who betrayed his oath. You were supposed to protect and serve, not terrorize and intimidate." The aftermath was swift. Sarah Mitchell was caught trying to cross into Canada. The Blue Line Patriots members in Sacramento were arrested before they could act. The forged documents were exposed as fraudulent within hours by forensic analysis. But the damage was real. The incident had exposed deep fractures in law enforcement, revealing networks of extremists who saw accountability as persecution. The federal investigation would continue for months, uncovering similar groups in 12 states. Standing in the damaged courtroom, looking at Stone's graffiti on the wall, Cassandra made a decision. She turned to the cameras that had captured everything. "Let this message remain," she said, pointing to the vandalism. "Let it remind us that the price of justice is eternal vigilance. There will always be those who confuse authority with impunity, who mistake accountability for oppression. But we will not yield to intimidation. We will not abandon our principles. The law stands firm, not because it is perfect, but because we continue to perfect it." The hearing proceeded an hour later in a different courtroom. The civil rights case against the Riverside Police Department moved forward with new evidence from the past days, adding weight to the plaintiff's claims. Chief Morrison resigned that afternoon. Lieutenant Foster was appointed interim chief with a mandate for reform. Brentwood, faced with federal conspiracy charges and abandoned by his former allies, agreed to cooperate fully with investigators. That evening, as Cassandra finally returned home, she found her notebook, the one documenting 48 incidents of being stopped while driving. She added a final entry, number 48, the last one, the one that changed everything. Maya found her mother on the porch watching the sunset. "So it's over." "This chapter is," Cassandra replied. "But the story continues. Tomorrow I go back to court. There are still cases to hear, justice to serve. After everything. The attack, the threats, the conspiracy." Cassandra smiled, thinking of all the judges before her who had faced threats for upholding justice, all the ones who would come after. Especially after everything. That's what they don't understand. Every attack on justice only makes us more determined to defend it. As news of Stone's arrest and the conspiracy's collapse spread across the country, something unexpected happened. Police officers began coming forward, reporting extremist elements in their own departments. The thin blue line that had protected corruption began to crack, replaced by officers who understood that accountability made them stronger, not weaker. 3 months later, Cassandra stood before Congress, testifying about the need for federal oversight of law enforcement. The room was packed, the nation watching. "Distinguished members of Congress," she began, her voice clear and strong. "What happened to me was not unique. It was only unique in that I had the power to fight back. Every day Americans face discrimination and abuse from those sworn to protect them. The question before us is not whether reform is needed, but whether we have the courage to implement it. The legislation that followed, known as the Miles Act, established federal standards for police training, mandatory body cameras, and citizen oversight boards. It faced fierce opposition, but ultimately passed with bipartisan support. But that victory came with a price. Cassandra continued to receive threats, continued to need security, continued to be a lightning rod for those who saw her as a symbol of everything wrong with modern America. Yet she persisted. In her courtroom, she continued to dispense justice fairly without regard to the color of someone's skin or the uniform they wore. She became a mentor to young lawyers and judges, teaching them that justice required not just knowledge of the law, but the courage to uphold it. The traffic stop that was meant to humiliate her had instead revealed her strength. The conspiracy meant to destroy her had instead exposed the corruption it sought to protect. And the system that Stone claimed was broken had proven its resilience through the very people he'd tried to terrorize. As Cassandra reflected on everything that had transpired, she thought about Officer Brentwood's words that night in the rain. "Anyone can buy a robe online." He was wrong. The robe was just fabric. What made a judge was the willingness to wear it despite the weight it carried to sit in judgment, knowing that justice would always have enemies, and to never ever stop fighting for what was right. The red light of Brentwood's dashcam had indeed recorded everything that night. But what it really captured was a moment when American justice was tested and refused to break. It captured the beginning of a reckoning that would reshape law enforcement for generations to come. And it all started with a traffic stop in the rain, a federal judge who refused to be silenced, and the simple, powerful truth that justice delayed is justice denied, but justice defended is justice defined. The congressional hearing had ended just hours ago, but Cassandra's phone hadn't stopped ringing. As she sat in her hotel room in Washington, D.C., Maya screening calls with practiced efficiency. A knock came at the door. Agent Chen stood there with an expression that immediately set off alarms. "Your Honor, we have a situation. Marcus Stone wants to make a deal." Stone had been in federal custody for 3 months, maintaining his silence despite mounting evidence. His sudden willingness to talk meant something had changed. "What kind of deal?" Cassandra asked, though she suspected she already knew. "He claims there's another attack planned. Not by him, but by people inspired by him. He'll give us details in exchange for a reduced sentence." Maya scoffed. "You can't seriously be considering this. He tried to kill Mom." "We don't have a choice," Agent Chen replied grimly. NSA intercepted chatter about something called Justice Day. Multiple cities coordinated attacks on courthouses. If Stone knows something... Within an hour, Cassandra found herself in a secure facility outside Washington, facing Marcus Stone through bulletproof glass. He looked smaller than she remembered, orange jumpsuit replacing tactical gear, but his eyes still burned with that familiar hatred. "Judge Miles," he said, his voice dripping with mock respect. "How the mighty have risen. Congress, the Miles Act. You're quite the celebrity now. You have information. Share it, or I leave." Stone leaned forward. "First, I want you to know something. What happened to you that night, the traffic stop? That was supposed to be the beginning of something beautiful. You were going to be discredited, humiliated, maybe spend a night in jail. Simple, clean. Instead, you exposed yourself and your entire network. Did I? Or did I inspire thousands of others?" Stone smiled coldly. "You see, Judge, you've become a symbol for both sides now. To some, you're a hero. To others, you're everything wrong with America. And those others, they're planning something that makes my little conspiracy look like a parking violation. Tell us about Justice Day." December 15th, 10 days from now. Courthouses in 12 cities will be hit simultaneously. Not with violence, though. With something worse. He paused, savoring the moment. "They're going to release everything." "What? What do you mean, everything?" Every sealed record, every judge's personal information, every witness protection location, every confidential informant's identity. They've been gathering data for months, maybe years. When they release it, the justice system won't recover for decades. Agent Chen immediately got on her phone, relaying the information. Cassandra studied Stone, trying to read him. "Why tell us this? What do you really want?" "Because they cut me out," Stone admitted, his pride wounded. "These new players, they think I'm old news. They're using my blueprint but claiming they're the real patriots. I want them to fail just to spite them." "Who's leading this?" Stone's smile widened. "That's the beautiful part. No one person. It's decentralized cells operating independently but coordinated. But there is one name you should know. Detective Ray Coleman." Cassandra's blood chilled. Coleman was still an active detective in Chicago, one who'd been very vocal about his opposition to the Miles Act. If he was involved... "Coleman's your inside man," Stone continued. "He has access to federal databases through joint task forces. He's been copying everything for months." The meeting ended with Stone providing more details, dates, usernames, partial plans. As Cassandra left the facility, she knew they were racing against time. 10 days to stop a cyber attack that could destroy the American justice system's credibility forever. Back at the FBI command center, the scope of the threat became clearer. Patricia Hawkins had assembled a task force of cyber experts, federal agents, and prosecutors. The main screen showed a map of the United States with red dots marking the 12 target cities. "We've identified suspicious activity in all 12 locations," a young analyst reported. "Data packets being positioned, dormant malware in court systems, unusual access patterns to sealed databases." "Can we stop it?" Harrison asked. "If we move now, maybe. But if we tip them off and they trigger early..." Cassandra studied the map, her legal mind working through the implications. "We need warrants for surveillance arrests and system access in 12 jurisdictions simultaneously. That's going to take days we don't have," Harrison finished. Unless what? "Unless we use the emergency provisions of the Patriot Act. National security threat, imminent danger." The room fell silent. Using those provisions was controversial, especially for domestic surveillance. It was exactly the kind of government overreach that Stone's followers claimed to be fighting against. "If we do that," Cassandra said carefully, "we validate their narrative. We become the authoritarian system they claim we are. And if we don't, they destroy the justice system's ability to protect witnesses and maintain security," Patricia countered. It was an impossible choice. Cassandra thought of all the witnesses whose lives would be endangered, all the confidential informants who would be exposed, all the judges whose families would be at risk. "There's another way," Maya said suddenly. She'd been quietly working on her laptop in the corner. "What if we let them think they're succeeding?" Everyone turned to look at her. "Hear me out. They're planning to release data from courthouse servers, right? What if we create honeypots, fake servers with fake data that looks real? Let them steal and release that while we protect the actual information." "That's actually brilliant," the analyst admitted. "We could populate it with enough real but harmless data to make it credible mix in false information that would be obviously fake upon investigation." Harrison was already warming to the idea. "We could even use it to track them. Embed trackers in the false data, see where it goes, who accesses it." The mini-climax came when Agent Chen's phone rang. "Coleman just accessed the witness protection database in Chicago. He's downloading everything right now." "Can we stop him remotely?" "If we cut his access now, he'll know we're on to him." Cassandra made the decision. "Let him download it, but switch the feed. Give him the honeypot data." The tech team scrambled, fingers flying across keyboards. On the main screen, they could see Coleman's download progress, 65%, 70%, 75%. "Switch initiated," the analyst announced. He's now downloading fabricated data. He won't know the difference until it's too late. For the next 72 hours, the FBI ran one of the most complex counterintelligence operations in its history. 12 cities, dozens of suspects, hundreds of agents working around the clock. They replaced real data with fake, tracked the conspirators' communications, and slowly tightened the net. Cassandra barely slept coordinating with federal judges across the country to issue sealed warrants, ensuring everything was done legally despite the urgency. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was using the very system Stone claimed was corrupt to stop those who would destroy it. On December 12th, 3 days before Justice Day, they got their first major break. Coleman made a mistake accessing a courthouse terminal from his personal laptop, leaving a digital trail straight to an encrypted server in Romania. That's where they're storing everything, Agent Chen explained. If we can take that server, we can stop the entire operation. But taking down a server in Romania required international cooperation, diplomatic channels, time they didn't have. What if we don't take it down? Cassandra suggested. What if we replace their stolen data with our honeypot data? It was audacious hack. The hackers replaced their treasure trove of secrets with elaborate fiction. The NSA was brought in their best cyber warriors, tasked with the impossible. The twist came on December 13th. As the team prepared for the cyber infiltration, Cassandra received a call from an unexpected source, Officer Daniel Brentwood. "Judge Miles, I need to speak with you. It's about Coleman. I know something." They met in a federal facility where Brentwood was serving his sentence. He looked different, humbled, scared, but also determined. "Coleman visited me last month," Brentwood began. "Said he was putting together something to honor Stone's vision. I thought he was just talking, but then he showed me something on his phone. Judge, he has photos of you, your daughter, your home, recent photos." Cassandra's blood ran cold. "He's been surveilling us." "Not just surveillance. He was talking about making an example. Said the cyber attack was just phase 1. Phase 2 was more personal." "Why didn't you report this earlier?" Brentwood looked down shamefully. "I was still angry. Still thought maybe you deserved. But then I saw those photos of your daughter. She's just a kid trying to make her mother proud. That's when I knew Coleman had crossed a line even I couldn't accept." "What's phase 2? December 16th, the day after the data release, while everyone's dealing with the chaos Coleman plans to... Brentwood swallowed hard. "He plans to kidnap your daughter. Use her as leverage to make you publicly recant your testimony, discredit the Miles Act." Maya, who had been listening from the next room, burst in. "Mom, we need to stay calm," Cassandra said, though her heart was racing. "Coleman doesn't know that we know. That's our advantage." Agent Chen was already coordinating protection details. "We'll put decoys in place, make it look like normal routine, while keeping you both completely secure." But Cassandra had a different idea. "No, we use this. Coleman thinks he's hunting us, but we make him the prey." The plan that emerged was dangerous but necessary. Maya would maintain her normal schedule, appearing to be vulnerable while actually surrounded by undercover agents. When Coleman or his people made their move, they'd be caught in the act. "Absolutely not," Harrison objected. "We're not using a civilian as bait." "I'm not just a civilian," Maya countered. "I'm a law student who's been training in self-defense since I was 12. My mother made sure I could protect myself." "Maya, no," Cassandra said firmly. "Mom, they targeted me to get to you. That makes this personal for me, too. Besides, we both know Coleman won't stop. Even if the cyber attack fails, he'll keep coming. This ends now." December 14th arrived with tension so thick it could be cut with a knife. The NSA team had successfully infiltrated the Romanian server, replacing gigabytes of sensitive data with carefully crafted fiction. The conspirators had no idea their weapon had been neutralized. Coleman, meanwhile, was in Chicago preparing for what he thought would be his moment of triumph. FBI surveillance showed him meeting with 3 other men, all former law enforcement who'd been disciplined or fired for excessive force. "Tomorrow, everything changes," they heard Coleman say through hidden microphones. "The judges, the politicians, the bleeding hearts who've destroyed law enforcement, they'll all be exposed. And Miles, she'll beg to undo what she's done." That night, Cassandra couldn't sleep. She stood at her hotel window looking out at Washington, D.C., thinking about how a simple traffic stop had spiraled into a national crisis. Her phone rang. It was Thomas Chen. "Judge, I've been investigating something. Remember how Stone knew exactly when you'd leave the courthouse that night?" "Yes. I've been checking the courthouse security logs. Someone accessed your calendar from an internal terminal that day. Someone who knew your schedule, your route home." "Who?" "Judge Raymond Fitzgerald." The name hit Cassandra like a physical blow. Fitzgerald, the California judge who'd been dismissing police brutality cases. He wasn't just sympathetic to Stone's cause, he'd been actively helping. "Are you certain?" "Digital forensics confirmed it. He's been feeding information to the Blue Line Patriots for months. Case details judge schedules, security protocols." Another judge. Another person who'd taken an oath to uphold justice, now revealed as corrupt. The cancer went deeper than anyone had imagined. December 15th. Justice Day dawned cold and clear. Across 12 cities, FBI agents were in position. The conspirators' malware activated at exactly noon Eastern Time, beginning massive downloads from courthouse servers. In the FBI command center, everyone watched as terabytes of data flowed out, all of it, fake, all of it, tracked all of it, leading back to the conspirators. "They're taking the bait," the analyst announced. Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, all downloading the honeypot data. Coleman was in his apartment watching what he thought was his triumph unfold. On his screen, files scrolled past witness names, addresses, judges' personal information. He began uploading it all to WikiLeaks, to news organizations, to social media platforms. But within minutes, something went wrong. The news organizations weren't reporting on shocking revelations. Instead, confused posts appeared questioning the data's authenticity. Names didn't match records, addresses led to vacant lots, the financial records showed impossible transactions. Coleman frantically checked the files, his confidence turning to panic as he realized the truth. He'd been played. All of it was fake. That's when his door exploded inward. FBI agents swarmed his apartment, catching him literally red-handed at his computer. "Detective Coleman, you're under arrest for conspiracy, cyber terrorism, and attempted kidnapping." "Attempted," Coleman snarled. "I haven't attempted anything yet." Agent Chen smiled grimly. "Your 3 associates were arrested an hour ago outside Maya Miles' apartment building. We've been watching you for days." Across the country, similar scenes played out. 73 arrests in 12 cities. The entire network rolled up in a matter of hours. The justice system they'd tried to destroy had instead demonstrated its resilience and adaptability. But the biggest shock came that evening. Judge Fitzgerald, realizing the conspiracy had failed, tried to flee to Mexico. He was arrested at the border, his car full of cash and fake IDs. In his possession, investigators found something that changed everything. A list of other judges who were sympathetic to the cause, who'd been making subtle rulings to undermine police accountability. The corruption wasn't just deep, it was systemic. Cassandra stood in the FBI command center watching as the scope of the investigation expanded. "How many?" she asked Harrison. "At least 15 judges across 7 states, all making rulings that seemed reasonable individually, but collectively undermined civil rights enforcement." "They were playing a long game," Patricia Hawkins added. "Death by 1,000 cuts to police accountability." The revelation sparked a judicial crisis. How could the public trust the justice system when judges themselves were corrupt? The calls for investigation and reform were deafening. 3 days later, Cassandra was back in her own courtroom in Riverside. The building still bore the scars of Stone's attack, but she'd insisted on returning. The symbolism mattered. Justice continued, despite threats and attacks. Her first case back was a simple contract dispute, mundane compared to recent events. But as she listened to the arguments, she felt the weight of public scrutiny. Every ruling she made would be examined for bias, every decision questioned. During a recess, Maya found her in her chambers. "Mom, there are protesters outside." Cassandra looked out the window. Two groups faced each other across the courthouse plaza. One held signs supporting police reform, the other demanding her resignation. The divide Coleman and Stone had tried to exploit was still there, raw and painful. "This isn't over, is it?" Maya asked. "No, sweetheart. We won this battle, but the war for justice never really ends. There will always be those who confuse accountability with persecution, who see equality as oppression." That evening, Cassandra received a call from the president himself. "Judge Miles, I want to thank you for your courage these past months. The country owes you a debt." "Mr. President, I was just doing my job." "Nevertheless, I'm nominating you for the Supreme Court. After everything you've been through, your commitment to justice is unquestionable." Cassandra was speechless. The Supreme Court, the highest level of the judiciary, a lifetime appointment, the chance to shape American justice for generations. "I need time to consider, Mr. President." "Of course, but Judge Miles, the country needs justices who've been tested and haven't broken. You've proven you're unbreakable." As news of the nomination leaked, the reaction was predictable. Supporters hailed it as recognition of her courage. Opponents claimed it was political reward for attacking police. The battle lines were drawn once again. But something unexpected happened. Lieutenant Foster, now Chief Foster, held a press conference with dozens of police officers standing behind her. "We support Judge Miles' nomination," she announced. "She's shown that accountability and law enforcement aren't enemies. They're partners in justice. The corrupt cops and extremist judges don't represent us. Judge Miles exposed them, and for that we're grateful." It was a turning point. When law enforcement itself supported her nomination, the opposition's narrative crumbled. The Senate confirmation hearings, while contentious, ultimately resulted in a 67-33 vote in her favor. On a spring morning, 6 months after that fateful traffic stop, Cassandra stood before the Chief Justice, raising her right hand to take the oath as the newest Associate Justice of the Supreme Court. "I, Cassandra Miles, do solemnly swear that I will administer justice without respect to persons and do equal right to the poor and to the rich." As she spoke the ancient words, she thought of Officer Brentwood, now serving his sentence but cooperating with reform efforts. Of Marcus Stone, whose conspiracy had ultimately strengthened the very system he tried to destroy. Of Detective Coleman and Judge Fitzgerald, whose corruption had led to the most comprehensive judicial review in American history. But mostly she thought of that rainy night on Riverside Boulevard, when a simple traffic stop had started a chain of events that changed everything. The red light of Brentwood's dashcam had indeed recorded history, not the history Stone intended, but the moment American justice was tested and emerged stronger. After the ceremony, Maya hugged her tight. "From a traffic stop to the Supreme Court. That's quite a journey, Mom." "The journey's not over," Cassandra replied, looking at the protesters still gathered outside, fewer now, their voices less certain. "It never is. But that's what justice requires: constant vigilance, endless commitment, and the courage to stand firm when tested." That evening, in her new chambers at the Supreme Court, Cassandra opened her old notebook, the one documenting 48 incidents of being stopped while driving. She added a final note. "The 48th stop was the last because it led me here, to a place where I can ensure no one else needs to keep such a notebook, where justice isn't about the color of your skin or the uniform you wear, but about the content of your character and the choices you make. The system isn't perfect, but it's perfectible. And that work continues, one case at a time, one ruling at a time, one act of courage at a time." As night fell over Washington, Justice Cassandra Miles began reviewing her first Supreme Court case. Outside, the city hummed with its usual energy, unaware that in this building, in this chamber, sat a woman who'd faced down corruption, conspiracy, and violence and emerged not just unbroken, but unbowed. The traffic stop that was meant to humiliate her had instead elevated her to the highest court in the land. The conspiracy meant to destroy her had instead exposed the corruption that threatened American justice. And the system that her enemies claimed was broken had proved its greatest strength, its ability to reform, to grow, to become more just with each challenge overcome. But even as she worked, Cassandra knew this wasn't an ending. It was a transformation. Somewhere out there, another officer was making a traffic stop. Another judge was presiding over a difficult case. Another citizen was demanding justice. The work continued, would always continue. And from her new position, Justice Cassandra Miles would ensure that the promise of equal justice under law wasn't just words on a building, but a living, breathing reality for every American who sought it. 3 years had passed since Justice Cassandra Miles took her seat on the Supreme Court, and the death threats had never really stopped. They'd simply become part of the routine, like morning coffee and evening reviews of cert petitions. But this morning's threat was different. It arrived not through the usual channels, but via a handwritten note slipped under her chamber door, past all security, written in familiar handwriting. Your first betrayal cost me 5 years. Your second will cost you everything. MS. Marcus Stone was supposed to be in federal maximum security, serving 25 to life. The handwriting was definitely his, confirmed quickly by FBI analysis. But Stone himself was accounted for, locked in his cell in Colorado when the note was delivered. Agent Chen, now Deputy Director Chen, arrived within minutes of Cassandra's call. This is impossible. Stone hasn't had contact with the outside world in 2 years. Solitary confinement, no visitors, no mail. Then how? Maya asked. She was visiting from Chicago, where she now worked as a civil rights attorney, following in her mother's footsteps, but carving her own path. Someone on the inside, Cassandra said quietly. Someone with access to this building, to Stone, to everything. The Supreme Court building was immediately locked down. Every employee questioned, every security tape reviewed. But nothing seemed amiss until a young clerk, Timothy Morrison, failed to show up for work. Morrison's been here 6 months, the Chief Justice's security detail reported. Spotless record. Yale law clerked for the Second Circuit before this. Find him, Cassandra ordered. But Timothy Morrison had vanished. His apartment was empty, his bank accounts drained, his digital footprint scrubbed. It was professional, too professional for a law clerk. The investigation that followed revealed something chilling. Morrison wasn't who he claimed to be. The real Timothy Morrison had died in a car accident 3 years ago, just after graduating from Yale. Someone had stolen his identity, created an elaborate backstory, and infiltrated the Supreme Court. But who? Maya demanded during an emergency meeting in Cassandra's chambers. Who has the resources to pull this off? The answer came from an unexpected source. Daniel Brentwood, now participating in a restorative justice program, contacted Cassandra through his lawyer. He had information, he said, that couldn't wait. They met via secure video link, Brentwood looking healthier than he had in years. The prison's reform program, having given him purpose, he'd lost long before that night in the rain. Judge Miles, Justice Miles, he corrected himself. After Stone was sentenced, his wife divorced him and disappeared. But she didn't just disappear. She had help. Professional help. What kind of help? Catherine Stone's maiden name was Volkov. Her father is Dmitry Volkov. The name sent chills through everyone present. Dmitry Volkov was a former KGB operative turned private intelligence contractor, someone who sold services to the highest bidder, someone with the resources to create false identities and infiltrate secure facilities. You're saying this is about Catherine Stone? Cassandra asked. She blamed you for everything. Stone's arrest, their divorce, losing everything. She went to her father for help. I know because she contacted me 6 months ago asking questions about Supreme Court security. I thought she was just angry venting. I didn't think... You didn't report this. Deputy Director Chen's voice was sharp. I'm reporting it now, Brentwood said firmly. I've made enough mistakes. I won't make another. The pieces were falling into place. Catherine Stone, using her father's resources, had planted someone in the Supreme Court. But for what purpose? The answer came when they discovered what cases Morrison had been working on. He had access to everything involving police oversight and civil rights. The Chief Justice revealed in an emergency meeting of all 9 justices. Every draft opinion, every private discussion, every preliminary vote. He was gathering intelligence. Justice Patterson said the same man who'd tackled Marcus Stone years ago. But why? Cassandra knew. Because there's a case coming. Riverside v. Coleman. It was the ultimate test case for the Miles Act, challenging its constitutionality, arguing that federal oversight of local police violated states' rights. If the court struck down the Miles Act, everything Cassandra had fought for would crumble. Oral arguments are next week, Chief Justice Roberts noted. If they know our preliminary positions, they can target us, Cassandra finished. Pressure, blackmail, or worse. The mini-climax erupted when Maya's phone buzzed with an unknown number. The message was simple. Your mother votes against the Miles Act, or we release everything about your father. Maya's face went pale. Her father, David Miles, had died when she was 10. A heart attack, the doctors said. Natural causes. But Maya had always wondered, especially after finding certain documents in her mother's papers years later. Mom, what are they talking about? Cassandra closed her eyes. The secret she'd carried for 15 years was about to surface. Your father didn't die of a heart attack. He was murdered. The room went silent. Even hardened federal agents seemed shocked. David was investigating judicial corruption. Cassandra continued, her voice steady despite the pain. He was a journalist, remember? He'd uncovered a network of judges taking bribes from private prison companies. The night he died, he was supposed to meet with a source who had proof. You knew. Maya's voice was broken. You knew he was murdered, and you never told me. I couldn't prove it. The coroner was paid off, the evidence destroyed. I tried for years, but every path led to dead ends or dead witnesses. Cassandra reached for her daughter's hand, but Maya pulled away. I became a judge partly to honor his memory, to fight the corruption he died trying to expose. And now they're using his death to manipulate you, Deputy Director Chen said grimly. They must have found something during their infiltration, some proof you couldn't find. Or they're bluffing, Justice Patterson suggested. But the next message proved they weren't bluffing. A video file arrived showing David Miles meeting with his source, then being followed by 2 men. The video cut off just before the attack, but the implication was clear. They had evidence of the murder. If this gets out, the Chief Justice said carefully, it won't just affect you, Cassandra. It will undermine public faith in the entire judiciary. A sitting Supreme Court justice who hid knowledge of murder for 15 years. I didn't hide it, Cassandra said firmly. I reported it to the FBI. The case was closed for lack of evidence. But the public won't see it that way, Justice Patterson noted. They'll see conspiracy, cover-up, corruption. The twist came when Deputy Director Chen's team traced the video's origin. It hadn't come from Catherine Stone or her father. It had come from inside the FBI itself. We have a mole, Chen announced grimly. Someone with access to cold case files, someone who's been feeding information to the Volkovs. The investigation spiraled outward. Trust evaporated as everyone became suspicious of everyone else. The Supreme Court justices were moved to secure locations. Maya was placed under protective custody, though she barely spoke to her mother, the revelation about her father creating a chasm between them. Then, just as oral arguments for Riverside v. Coleman were set to begin, Timothy Morrison reappeared. Not in person, but on every major news network simultaneously, a sophisticated deep fake that looked entirely real. My name is Timothy Morrison, and I've been inside the Supreme Court for 6 months, the fake Morrison announced. I've witnessed corruption at the highest levels. Justice Cassandra Miles has been using her position to pursue a personal vendetta against law enforcement stemming from her husband's criminal activities and subsequent murder by his criminal associates. It was character assassination at its finest, mixing truth with lies so seamlessly that even Cassandra had to admire the craftsmanship. The real Morrison, or whoever he truly was, remained hidden while his digital puppet spread poison across the airwaves. "We need to respond," the Chief Justice said during an emergency conference call. "The court's credibility is at stake." "No," Cassandra said firmly. "That's what they want. They want us reactive defensive. We proceed with oral arguments as scheduled. We show that the court continues to function despite attacks." "You're going to sit for arguments while they're destroying your reputation?" Justice Patterson asked. "I'm going to do my job. That's what justices do." The morning of oral arguments arrived with protests outside the Supreme Court building. The plaza was divided, supporters of the Miles Act on one side, opponents on the other, and in between a small but vocal group demanding Cassandra's resignation. Inside the courtroom, Cassandra took her seat, feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes upon her. The attorney arguing against the Miles Act was Richard Thornton, a constitutional lawyer known for his states' rights positions. But as he began speaking, Cassandra noticed something off about his manner. He kept glancing at the gallery, specifically at a woman in the third row. Catherine Stone. She was there in the Supreme Court, watching with cold satisfaction as her plan unfolded. During a recess, Deputy Director Chen confirmed what Cassandra suspected. "She entered legally as a member of the public. We can't remove her without cause." "Then we give her cause," Maya said, surprising everyone. She'd been silent since arriving that morning, the rift with her mother still raw. "Let me talk to her." "Absolutely not," Cassandra said. "Mom, she lost her husband because of his choices. I lost my father because he tried to do the right thing. Maybe I can reach her." Before anyone could stop her, Maya walked directly to Catherine Stone during the lunch recess. The security detail tensed, ready to intervene, but Maya simply sat down beside her. "Your husband tried to destroy my mother," Maya said quietly. "My father was murdered for trying to expose corruption. We've both lost people we loved, but this has to stop." Catherine looked at her with surprise, then contempt. "Your mother destroyed my life." "No, Marcus destroyed your life. He chose violence. He chose hatred. My mother just held him accountable. She humiliated him. He humiliated himself. Every choice he made led to that moment, just like every choice you're making now is leading to your own destruction." Catherine stood to leave, but Maya grabbed her wrist. In that moment of contact, Maya slipped something into Catherine's hand, a photograph. It was of David Miles, with young Maya taken just days before his death. "That's what real loss looks like," Maya said. "Not losing someone to justice, but losing someone to injustice. Think about that before you destroy more lives." Catherine Stone walked away, but something in her expression had changed. The cold certainty was cracked, replaced by something that might have been doubt. The afternoon session resumed with the government's defense of the Miles Act. Solicitor General Patricia Williams argued passionately about the need for federal oversight, citing statistics showing dramatic decreases in police misconduct complaints since the Act's passage. But halfway through her argument, the lights flickered. Then the screens throughout the courtroom activated, displaying classified FBI files about David Miles's murder investigation. "What is this?" the Chief Justice demanded. On the screens, documents scrolled past, showing that the FBI had identified David's killers years ago, 2 hitmen connected to the private prison network he'd been investigating. But the investigation had been buried, the files sealed, the killers never prosecuted. The courtroom erupted in chaos. This wasn't part of Catherine Stone's plan. Someone else was pulling strings now. Cassandra stood, her judicial robes billowing as she moved. "Chief Justice, I request an immediate recess and a full investigation into this security breach." But before Roberts could respond, a new message appeared on the screens. "Justice Miles was right. The system is corrupt, but not in the way you think." The message was signed Timothy Morrison, the real one. In the confusion that followed, the truth emerged in pieces. The man who'd infiltrated the Supreme Court wasn't working for Catherine Stone or her father. He was the son of one of the judges. David Miles had been investigating a judge who'd committed suicide rather than face exposure. "I spent 3 years planning this," Morrison said when he was finally caught trying to leave the country. "Not to hurt Justice Miles, but to expose the truth." The FBI knew who killed David Miles, but buried it to protect their own corruption investigation. They let killers walk free to preserve a bigger case that never materialized. Deputy Director Chen's face was ashen as she reviewed the leaked files. "This is accurate. The decision was made at the highest levels 15 years ago. David Miles' murder was deemed acceptable collateral damage in a larger investigation." Cassandra felt the world spinning. Her husband's killers had been known all along. The system she'd devoted her life to had failed at the most fundamental level, not through incompetence, but through deliberate choice. "You knew?" she asked Chen. "You personally knew?" "I found out 6 months ago when I was promoted to deputy director. I was trying to find a way to tell you." "Get out," Cassandra said quietly. "Everyone get out." The courtroom cleared, leaving only the 9 justices. Chief Justice Roberts looked older than his years as he addressed them. "This is unprecedented. We have a justice whose husband was murdered in a covered-up conspiracy, an infiltration of our highest court, and now evidence of FBI corruption spanning decades. How do we proceed?" "We do what we always do," Justice Patterson said firmly. "We apply the law. Personal trauma doesn't change constitutional principles." "Doesn't it?" Cassandra asked. "How can I fairly judge a case about police oversight when I've just learned the federal oversight system let my husband's killers walk free?" "Because that's what makes you qualified," the Chief Justice said unexpectedly. "You've seen the system at its worst and still believe in justice. That's not bias, that's wisdom." The vote on Riverside versus Coleman was scheduled for the next morning. That night, Cassandra sat in her chambers with Maya, the first real conversation they'd had since the revelation about David. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you," Cassandra said. "I thought I was protecting you." "I know," Maya replied. "But Mom, we need to decide what to do with this information. The real Timothy Morrison leaked it, but we can confirm or deny it. We can shape the narrative. Or we can tell the truth. All of it." The next morning before the vote, Cassandra did something unprecedented. She called a press conference on the Supreme Court steps. 15 years ago, my husband was murdered for investigating judicial corruption. Yesterday, I learned the FBI knew his killers, but chose not to prosecute to protect a larger investigation. This failure of justice has haunted my family for over a decade." The crowd was silent, reporters frozen in shock. But this failure is exactly why the Miles Act is necessary. Not because local law enforcement is inherently corrupt, but because without oversight, without accountability, any system can fail. The FBI failed my husband. The Riverside police failed me. But the solution isn't to abandon oversight, it's to strengthen it to ensure that no one is above the law, whether they wear a badge, a robe, or carry a federal shield. Some will say I'm biased, that personal tragedy clouds my judgment. They're right that I've been shaped by tragedy. But that tragedy taught me that justice isn't about vengeance or personal satisfaction. It's about ensuring that what happened to my family doesn't happen to others. That's why I became a judge. That's why I sit on this court. And that's why I will vote based on the law and the Constitution, not on my personal pain. The vote that followed was 6-3 in favor of upholding the Miles Act. Cassandra's opinion, joined by 5 other justices, would become one of the most cited in civil rights law. "Federal oversight of local law enforcement," she wrote, "is not an intrusion on states' rights, but a fulfillment of the federal government's obligation to ensure equal protection under law for all citizens." When local systems fail, federal intervention becomes not just permissible, but necessary. But the personal cost was still unfolding. Catherine Stone was arrested for conspiracy, her father's network exposed and disbanded. The real Timothy Morrison was charged with identity theft and espionage, but received a reduced sentence for exposing the FBI cover-up. The FBI officials who had buried David Miles's case were brought before Congress. Some resigned, others were prosecuted, and the entire Bureau underwent its most significant reform since its founding. Daniel Brentwood was released early for his cooperation, entering witness protection after testifying about the broader network of corruption he'd witnessed. In a letter to Cassandra, he wrote, "That night in the rain, I thought I was enforcing justice. You showed me I was perverting it. Thank you for holding me accountable." Marcus Stone, watching from his maximum security cell, gave one interview before being placed in permanent solitary confinement. "Justice Miles thinks she won," he said. "But look at the cost. Her husband dead, the FBI corrupted, the Supreme Court infiltrated. I may be in prison, but the system is broken beyond repair." He was wrong. The system wasn't broken. It was being rebuilt stronger and more accountable. The Miles Act survived its constitutional challenge. Police departments across the country implemented new training and oversight measures. The FBI created an independent review board for all cases involving potential cover-ups. But the most significant change came from an unexpected source. Maya Miles, inspired by her mother's courage and her father's sacrifice, established the David Miles Foundation for Investigative Justice, dedicated to exposing corruption wherever it hid. "My father died seeking truth," Maya announced at the foundation's launch. "My mother lives defending justice. This foundation will do both." 6 months after the Riverside versus Coleman decision, Cassandra sat in her Supreme Court chambers, reading briefs for the next term's cases. Her secretary knocked and entered. "Madam Justice, you have a visitor." It was Catherine Stone, out on bail pending her trial. She looked older, defeated, but also somehow clearer. "I came to apologize," she said simply. "Not for myself, but for Marcus. He lost his way long before that night he arrested you. I see that now." "Why tell me this?" "Because your daughter was right. I lost my husband to his own choices. You lost yours to actual injustice. I wanted to hurt you, but I only hurt myself." She pulled out a flash drive. "This contains everything my father's network, the FBI, moles other judges who were compromised. I'm cooperating fully with the investigation, but I wanted you to have this directly." After Catherine left, Cassandra stood at her window looking out at the city where so much had happened. The protests had faded, the crisis had passed, but the work continued. Tomorrow, there would be new cases, new challenges to justice, new tests of the system's strength. Her phone rang. It was Maya. "Mom, I just wanted you to know I'm proud of you. Dad would be too." "Thank you, sweetheart. How's Chicago?" "Busy. I'm representing 3 families in police misconduct cases, using everything you taught me." "And everything you taught me," Cassandra replied, thinking of Maya's courage in confronting Catherine Stone. "Justice isn't inherited. It's chosen every day in every action." As the sun set over Washington, Justice Cassandra Miles returned to her briefs. Outside, carved in marble above the Supreme Court's entrance, were the words, "Equal justice under law." They were more than words now. They were a promise paid for in blood and tears, defended with courage and conviction, and renewed with each decision that placed principle above personal interest. The 48th traffic stop had indeed been the last, but it had also been the first step in a journey that transformed not just one woman, but an entire nation's understanding of justice. The red light of Officer Brentwood's dashcam had captured a moment of injustice, but what followed had illuminated a path toward something better. The system wasn't perfect, it never would be, but it was perfectible. And as long as there were people like Cassandra Miles willing to stand up when tested, to speak truth when silenced, to demand justice when denied, it would continue to bend toward justice. In her desk drawer, Cassandra still kept the notebook documenting those 48 stops. But now beside it lay another notebook empty, waiting. Because the work of justice was never finished. It simply passed from one generation to the next, one case at a time, one courageous act at a time, one persistent demand for equality at a time. The traffic stop was over, but the journey toward justice continued, endless and essential, carried forward by all who refused to accept that this is just how things are, and insisted instead that things could and must be better.